Welcome to the Bee Podcast. I'm your host, Jeressa, and today we're diving into a topic that hits home for a lot of people, the reality of landing in Canada and trying to figure out the unwritten rules of life and money here. And I'm joined today by Bisola Tijani, someone who has walked this path and has some incredible insights on how to actually thrive once you get here. Bisola, before we dive into the deep end, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a bit about your journey.
Yes, sure. Thank you so much, Jarissa. Hi, everyone. My name is Bisola Tijani. I'm the founder of We Screen. I moved to Canada in 2019, and it's been fun since then. I moved as a new immigrant from Nigeria. I moved at the age of 23, moving as a permanent resident. I had to figure out life here. And despite having a finance background, I still struggled to understand how money worked in Canada. And as a result of that, I figured if I, with a finance background, is struggling to understand, how much more those who don't have like the kind of background or education I have in finance. So that inspired me to start talking about financial education and financial literacy on social media. And I've since been able to gather over 150,000 followers across platforms and impact several lives using my social media content.
Awesome. It's so great to have you here, Bisola. So, I want to start with something that causes a lot of stress early on, and that's credit. It feels like this invisible score that controls your life. So, here's our question for you, Bisola. If you had to start over right now, knowing what you know, what three specific steps would you take to build your credit within your first 6 months of entering Canada?
Definitely one, pay up on time. Then two, actually use the credit card, because I feel like I've seen this wide demographic of immigrants who some people do not use their credit card at all because they're scared of getting into debt and they're also not used to it. And there's also the demographic of people who actually do, like, they overutilize their credit card. So it's like everyone is on the two spectrums. So instead, I'll say use your credit card, use it well, but do not overutilize it. So anywhere from 30% of your contribution limit would be what you should say, like you should use. So if your credit limit is $1,000, you should aim to use anywhere from $300 and below, so that you can stay within the right approved limit for a healthy credit score. And last but not the least, I would say get credit education, understand how to read your credit card statements, pay on time, pay at the due date, and pay the full balance. Otherwise, that is when you start to acquire those interests without you even realizing.
Yeah, that's a solid roadmap. It's interesting because while you're trying to build your financial foundation, you're also trying to build a life, which is hard to do in a vacuum. So, moving beyond numbers, it is scary trying to find your way in a new environment, and not knowing anyone only adds to that pressure. So, Bisola, how did you find your community here? What really worked for you when it came to making new friends and finding people who made Canada feel like home for you?
That's so true. And I think it works differently for everyone. For me specifically, I was able to make new connections on social media. So even prior to moving, I was already making connections on social media. And even when I came, I joined like communities through social media where they would have hangouts occasionally in summer and even in winter months, Christmas and all of that. Then I also made new connections through like I joined the platform called Meetup, and I made like connections in specific groups. So I remember joining a photography meetup group then, and I also joined like a content creation meetup group as well. And that's how I was able to make some connections of people who are interested in the same thing as me. So I would recommend Meetup for sure. Then I would recommend religious organizations like churches, mosque and all of that. They usually would have like groups of people who are maybe doing same thing or interested in same thing, and they will always have support group as well. So I highly recommend exploring religious organizations too.
Yeah, that's a very realistic insight, Vizula. Finding that circle makes such a difference, especially when you're navigating all these new systems. It's easy to make a wrong turn when you don't have that guidance. So, on that note, what are some of the most common financial mistakes or pitfalls you see newcomers falling into? And more importantly, how can people spot them early on and avoid them?
I'll say the most important mistake that I find is not getting financial education. In a country like Canada, ignorance is not an excuse. So you have to be intentional about learning how the credit system works, how taxes work, how investing works, and everything of such. And most immigrants are not used to these things because it's not the same as to the country they came from. So you have to be intentional about getting that financial education just because ignorance is not an excuse.
Yeah, I 100% totally agree. It's all about staying ahead of the curve. And speaking of things you need to stay ahead of, tax season. It's the one time of year that tends to stress everyone out, especially the first timers. So, what was your experience like doing your taxes for the first time in Canada? If you could go back to that version of yourself, how would you approach it differently now?
So now there are more resources than when I came, or at least I am aware that there are more resources. So I would say there are several tax clinics, tax organizations, even NGOs as well that are offering tax filing services. If you're a newcomer, I'll definitely recommend you explore using them. They usually come for free for you either as a student or a new immigrant PR. You can utilize them so they can help you with filing your taxes for the first time. Alternatively, you can hire a tax professional for a very affordable cost, anywhere from $50 to $100. You'll be able to hire a CPA that will file your taxes for you. But I'll say that should only be after you've explored the free option, right? So those are the ways that I would say. In the beginning, when I did mine for the first time, I had no idea there was any such thing as tax clinic, and I also did not want to make any mistake filing on my own online. So I went the third route, which is to hire a tax professional to file my taxes for me.
It definitely gets easier once you know the rhythm of it, right? And
Yeah.
so, for now, we've covered credit, community, mistakes, and taxes. But there's always that one hidden thing about the Canadian financial system that catches people off guard. So, in your opinion, Bisola, what is the one thing about the system here that works completely differently than people expect? And more importantly, what's your cheat code for navigating it successfully?
That's a really good question, Jarissa. I would say understanding how to take advantage of opportunities, or I would say I like to think of them as loopholes in the tax system. So things like using a TFSA when it comes to investing, utilizing your RRSP to reduce your tax amount due, using things like FHSA if you plan to buy a home in Canada. So understanding different account types and how those vehicles can help you towards your wealth building journey, I think they are very, very important, and those could be like a cheat code for someone who is able to understand how to use them well and leverage them for their financial opportunities in Canada. Beyond that, I would also staying informed as to what's going on in the country. You can, if you live here, you have to also be here, right? For example, the FHSA account was introduced 2 years ago, so it's not really something that has always been in the system. However, if you are living in Canada, if you were not intentional about staying informed, then you wouldn't know there is any account of such that could help you be like able to buy your first home easier than it used to be before the account ever existed. So I'll say always staying informed and stay curious as well. There might be things you don't know. Either go online to make more research, go online to, or ask a professional, speak to a consultant, or do your own homework. There is Google these days, YouTube, ChatGPT, many tools that will help simplify getting knowledge for you. But just don't stay ignorant, because like I said earlier, ignorance is not an excuse.
Great. That's our quote of the day. So this has been an incredible conversation, Bisola. I think what I'm taking away from today is that while the Canadian financial system has its hurdles, it's not impossible to navigate once you have the right community and the right information. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your experience with us. It was really nice to have you.
Thank you very much, Joyce.
The B Podcast, your Canada guide.